All right, today I've got Michael Stahl. He's a fellow Ohioan, and he's in self-storage and doing a couple other new things that I'm excited to hear more about. Michael, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, John, for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm a big fan of the Do More podcast, so I'm excited to be on the show and share my story with everybody.
Well, I appreciate that and appreciate you coming on. And yeah, your story is definitely interesting, so it'll be fun to dive into. So let's kind of start, way back. I don't want to say way back. That makes it sound old. Let's start, after school. What'd you do? What was, I'm assuming maybe you went to college. What that kind of look like?
Yeah, so I started kind of the traditional path. I was kind of raised to go to school, get good grades, and get a job at a blue chip company. And I did that. I went to college, got degrees, got an MBA, and started working for the phone company. And, I thought, here, now I've made it. This was back when the phone company, that was the only place you could buy a phone, was from the phone company. So, it was about as blue chip as you could possibly be. And within the first couple years, I realized this great people, still a lot of friends with a lot of them today, but this wasn't what I wanted to do. I saw many of them, after 30, 40 years, you get a sheet cake in the conference room and maybe people that aren't on a conference call say congratulations and you're done. It's like, this is not, that's the end. So a coworker of mine, we actually were the same age, kind of the same mindset. And we said, we got to come up with a plan B. So we started looking at real estate in our mid-20s. And his family had some vacation rentals in Gatlinburg, and my in-laws had some low-income housing as well. So we had some exposure to real estate. And we kind of found a little niche that we wanted to focus on. And this was in the early 2000s. We were buying, we thought we were super smart. We were buying for cash flow in Ohio. And then we were buying for appreciation in Florida. We were flipping pre-construction homes, and we would take the money from Florida and buy another single family home in Ohio. And it was working really great until it, you know where the story's going. When I said early 2000s, in 2008, the whole thing collapsed. And our fatal flaw was that we anticipated that the model wouldn't last forever, but we thought it would be more of a soft landing. And maybe, just for numbers' sake, maybe we made 50,000 on one house in Florida, and then maybe we made 30, and then maybe we made 10, and then we say, okay, this isn't going to work anymore. But what ended up happening was you made 50 on one, and then negative 200 on the next, and it just collapsed. So we took our lumps, and we scaled our portfolio way back just to do what we could. It was a tough, challenging time, and I'm simplifying it, but there were some other things like Chinese drywall and lawsuits and all these kind of things that came into play that we were young and trying to figure out what to do and trying to do the right thing. But we survived it. And in around 2011, we had pared our portfolio back to just what we could maintain. We had to liquidate everything we could. And at that point, we just kind of focused on our careers. And from 2011 to 2019, I was just kind of rising up through the ranks of, the IT telecom space. And fast forward to 2019, I tell people that I got into storage at a gas station in Switzerland, and it's true. It's a crazy story. My wife and I were on vacation with another couple. And we were going through Europe and did the Autobahn and Oktoberfest, and it was an awesome trip. We stopped for gas in Switzerland, and our wives walk into a gift shop next door, and my buddy and I are just kind of stretching, standing outside, and he says to me, I own this land where my business is at, and it's not making me any money. What do you think about building a storage facility there? And I think we all have moments in our lives where, whether it's an epiphany or it's just a conversation that changes the trajectory of your life. That was it for me. And I didn't realize it at the time, but my initial thought was, yeah, let's do this. It's time to get back into real estate. I loved real estate. But I'd always thought that storage was, millions of dollars and you can't get into it. And, so I had that limiting belief. But here, he already owns the land, and all we have to do is build a building and start. So I felt like, all right, let's do this.
Yeah. And so I want to back up a little bit. I want to, just cut you off. Sorry, but
No worries.
want to back up a little bit. When you mid 2000s, when you got into real estate, um, were you still working 9 to 5, or did you guys quit and you were like, let's go full into real estate investing?
No, we were still doing our job, regular, 9 to 5,
Yeah,
and
that was all
we would
sides.
we'd stay after work and use the whiteboard in the conference room, and we'd work on our single family stuff there. But it was, we would do it all at night and on the weekends. So
Yeah, just grinding, which
keep grinding.
and it sounds like you got rid of everything around 11. So
Mhm.
after between 11 and 19, you had no real estate. Is that right?
We had 3 rentals left that we just
Okay.
maintained. We picked the best 3 that had solid tenants that had, and they stayed there for years, so they kind of, ran themselves. So,
Yeah. So what were you thinking long term for those properties? Were you thinking was the the recession kind of bit you so hard that you're like, you know what, I'm done with real estate. Let's just hold on these 3. It'll be a nice, it'll add to your retirement. What was your thought process?
at first we thought let's ride out the cycle. But then the cycle ended up taking longer than we anticipated, and we had no idea how long this cycle was going to last. So, and we just decided, let's pause it for now. And at the same time, we started having families, and we have little kids, and so real estate kind of took a side burner. It was just something that we still had. We're still getting the tax benefits from it, but that was basically it. It was kind of off to the side.
Yeah. So then come 2019, you get this opportunity to
Mhm.
get back, well, not get back, but get started again in real estate
That's
and in
right.
self-storage.
That's right. Yep. And once we decided to build this building, we kind of just immersed myself in learning storage. And at the time, there wasn't as many resources that there are now. It feels like everybody's got a course or a training or something that you can go through now. But at the time, there was a couple, and I gravitated towards the group that you're part of now, the Storage Rebellion. They were great people, great portal, and what I found was that if I had a question, people would help me, but I could also just search, and they're like, "Well, here's a whole thread about exactly what I'm dealing with," and I could read about it. So I felt like I had a safety net. Like you're not just going into this alone,
Yep.
and that was really helpful.
Yeah. What'd your due diligence look like before you were like, obviously you said, yeah, let's go ahead and do this, but I'm sure there's some due diligence. What did that
Mhm.
look like?
For the first one, we
Yeah.
didn't. I didn't know. We didn't really. It just went off gut. Like, this feels
You
like a
started
good thing to
building.
do. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And we just built a building, and it was a 10,000 square foot. We were doing contractor bays, so that was
Mhm.
before the flex space was really a cool thing to do. That was our first building, and we just said, let's just build it.
What
There was
size, what
no
size units were
deal.
those?
Well, the crazy thing was we were going to be each one was going to be about 1,000 square feet. And what ended up happening was we had just got the frame up, and people were pulling in the parking lot and saying, "What is that building? Can I rent it?" And we ended up renting the building to 2 tenants before we finished the whole thing. We didn't, which saved us money because we didn't have to put the divider walls in. We only put one wall in. And they said, I'll epoxy the floors. I'm going to put a loft in. I'll put LED lights in. So that's what really triggered us. We're on to something here. There is a huge
Yeah.
demand for this right now, that people are wanting to rent it, and they're willing to even invest in this property for their business. So that was, we really didn't have any due diligence. We just went in blind and
Just started building.
just started
Which
doing it.
it's funny to say because it was only 7 years ago, but that's how storage was 7 years ago, right? And that was storage, but it was contractor based, but still similar, right? That's what
Hmm.
people did. It's like, I got some land, I'm just going to build. There are some people still doing that, but hurting. And obviously, there was a huge demand in your area because you had people drive by. It just sounds like
Yep,
before you're even done with it, you had people ready to sign the lease.
that's right. Yep.
That's
And
awesome.
then,
So
and
then you're still working your 9 to 5 at this time too, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So that first one went so well, we started building relationships with other, people to start to try to find other facilities. And there is a facility 5 minutes from my house that if you were to put on a piece of paper, what are you looking for in a value add? I mean, this checked every box. Like they didn't answer the phone, the grass was grown over, the lights, half of them worked. I mean, I thought it was abandoned, and we couldn't even get a hold of them. And we had a realtor that knew who owned it, and they connected us. And that's where, it's another common theme on the Do More podcast is build relationships. Once we connected with her, she was like, no, not selling. And I'm sure she'd been asked a million times. But that kind of the sales side of me was like, there's something going on here. And I needed to figure out what it was. And once we started just try to be neighborly and friendly, I'm not trying to steal your property. She told me that she had inherited the property from her father. So she didn't want to run the business. She hated confrontation and collections and all those things, but it had sentimental value to her. So we continued the conversation with her and said, when you're ready, we would be interested, and we can honor your father however you'd like. We can keep the name, keep the colors, whatever you would like to do, we would do that. But, politely saying, you're not really honoring him by letting this property just collapse.
Yep.
And she knew that. 6-8 months later, she calls us and says, I'm ready. And it's a longer story. It wasn't quite that simple, but there was some challenges with it, but we ended up closing on that property. And to your point, we did this crazy thing where we just answered the phone when it rang, and we went from 37% occupied to 92%. And there was crazy tailwinds that were happening. And we thought we're brilliant. We're excellent storage operators. We cut the grass and we fixed the lights and put the website. We did all the things that we're doing now, but it was mostly just answering the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You talked about your sales background.
Mm-hmm.
That deal especially. So it sounds like initially you had to hunt her down, right? Like it was, it helped that you knew it was value add and it's 5 minutes from your house. So that probably helped, but you were persistent and you wanted to get in touch with her. How was that first conversation? And then how did that kind of transpire over time? And kind of walk us through that. Cause I think a lot of people give up on the first kind of touch, whether that's a letter, a call, whatever it is. And they're like, oh, too big of a hurdle. I'm not going to try to get over this. So kind of walk us through that on how you broke through.
Yeah. So the first conversation wasn't like, hey, I want to buy your facility. It was more kind of an introduction, because our property that we had built this other contractor base on was kind of close, kind of adjacent. So we used that as an entry point of saying, hey, we have some storage. It's more of a we're kind of neighbors. Let's just kind of, can we have a conversation? But our intent was really to see what her interest was in selling the property. So that's how we initially got her on the phone. And then from there, she was willing to meet. So we met her at the facility, and she still wasn't willing to say much, but we're saying, hey, we're getting into storage. Can you show us a little bit of how you run your business? And we kind of used it twofold. One, we wanted to buy the facility, but two, I wanted to see what is she doing, because I want to start buying facilities. And she was willing to share with us how she ran the facility, but what she did. And that kind of opened up the conversation, and we just started talking, so it wasn't, I think a lot of times people come in and they're just blasting out to all these people and say, hey, they try a soft intro of, I'm interested, I'm a family. Here's a picture of my dog. Do you want to sell your facility? And they've seen all of those different approaches, where this was very personable, and it wasn't a let me try to buy your facility. It was just getting to know them, before you actually try to, throw it out there that you're interested in buying it.
What was that? And obviously that's a different strategy. And I've done that too. handful of facilities. Like, hey,
Mhm.
we're down the road. I just want to meet up and kind of
Right.
network. And those have been the people that are hard to get a hold of. But what was your thought? Why did you go that route as opposed to like day one? Like, hey, yeah, we are nearby and we would like to look to buy your facility. Did you already kind of know that she didn't want to sell, or was that
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
So you already knew that. So
Yeah.
you knew you had to find a different strategy.
Correct. The realtor had told us that he had other
Gotcha.
people approach him, and she said no because the realtor wanted to get the commission, and he's like, "Here's her name and number. She's not going to sell." But so I knew going in she had her guard up, and there was a wall. So I just had to try to figure out what is that wall? Why is it there? And maybe there's a way, that we could structure something.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
I mean, a ton of great learning points there. Because I do think a lot of people just they'll call initially, nothing. The person doesn't want to sell. They're like, okay, we'll follow up
Yep.
in whatever, a year, 2 years, whatever. Same thing with a letter. So
Yeah.
yeah, you got to find another way, right? You just have to keep going, especially when it's like you're not sending out thousands of letters.
Mm-mm.
That was, you're hunting with a sniper basically. You're
That's right.
trying to find one facility and take that down. It was near where you live. It just made sense. So, yeah, a lot of good things to learn there. So, what did that deal look like? If you can tell us kind of more information, details.
It was so. So what ended up happening was as we had agreed on a price, and then because it's a small town, somebody else found out about the deal who has very deep pockets, and he came and said, "I'll buy your house, I'll buy your storage facility, I'll pay cash, I'll close in 30 days."
Oh
And
man,
we thought we lost the deal, and so she came to us and said, "I don't like him, but I like you. But if you match his offer, we'll sell it to you." And we thought we lost,
including her house.
including her house.
Okay.
Yeah. So we thought we lost the deal, and come to find out, we trying to be creative, and we ended up finding a way that we could come up with the money and match his offer. And then as soon as we closed on the deal, we already had somebody lined up to buy her house because the house wasn't great, but the property was amazing, great view. So we had somebody lined up to buy the house right away, and then we could pay that money right back. And we structured a deal with a private lender to help bridge that gap. And this private lender, crazy story, did not like the other person, so they were really
All on
wanting
board.
us. They were on board, and it was just kind of casual conversations that were like, "Oh, we lost the deal. This is what happened." And like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Who's buying it? No, no, no. Here's the money. You take it down." And we did. We closed on it. We sold the house immediately, paid the lender back that money, and then within 8 months, we refinanced the property, paid them back. And they were happy. Everybody was happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was it was like this roller coaster ride where you did all this work, you built all this relationship, you thought you had the deal, and then you lost the deal, and then all of a sudden you have the deal again, and then and it was this roller coaster ride. And until we actually closed on it, I didn't know if this was going to happen or not. But it ended up being our best facility because it was such a value add, and we've added two buildings on that site. So we've added square footage, we added outdoor storage, so we've increased the revenue there. Plus, just filling up the facility and cleaning it up. It's really turned into kind of our flagship, place that's generating cash flow.
It's awesome. Yeah, and I mean, just everything goes back to relationships, right? I mean, this is a small, real estate investing, storage especially is a small world. Real estate
Yeah.
investing is still a small world, and you combine those two in your area, that world's even smaller. All it takes is one person to not like that other buyer, right? And
Mhm.
especially the seller didn't like that person. You've already
Mhm.
built the strong relationship with the seller. Like it's
Yeah.
people try to go too fast, I think.
Yeah.
Uh, and
And
just
I
throwing
always
numbers
use.
out there, and there's people. I've had a few deals where same kind of thing where I I took the time, and I've had two situations where I took the time, built the relationship. Someone else tried to come in, buy it, and they were like, I don't want to sell to them. So if you can get closer to number, and it wasn't far off, they'd sell to me. Then I've had other situations where I didn't take the time, I didn't put the effort in, and I kind of just half-assed it and didn't get the deal because someone else swooped in and built the relationship. So it just goes back to how building relationships is so important. I want to ask, you said it took, I think, 8 months to refi the private money out. Why 8 months? Were you stabilizing?
We were stabilizing it and trying to get it to a bankable position, because it like it was at 37% occupied, and not all of that 37 was doing the part we had to pay. So we were really just trying to get the revenue up so that it would support it. It'd be a no-brainer for a bank deal.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's still a quick time frame, right? Like 8 months to stabilize a deal, especially a commercial deal. Like that's really good. All right, so you got this 2 deals now. What happened after that?
Then, like, quickly right after, another, just word of mouth, we got another facility 35 minutes away from us, and so now we have 3. And
how'd you find that one?
Just through our personal network. So somebody said, hey, these guys are buying storage. I know a facility that was for sale. I know it's for sale, but they listed and it didn't close. So we met with them, and interesting, same thing, relationships. The owners were like, hey, you guys remind me of me 10 years ago, So they were willing, because they liked us, and another common theme in the sales thing is people buy from people they like.
Yep.
And if you just be genuine and you be, friendly, they said, we're willing to do a seller financing deal with you guys. So that was why they weren't selling before, is people had asked and they said no, but they were willing to do it for us. And so we ended up buying that facility. That wasn't as much of, they were okay operators. They were just tired of doing it. They didn't want to do it anymore. So we put in the website and some gate automation, things like that, but everything else was pretty good. So it was just adding more to the portfolio.
Yeah. So 3 pretty quickly, it sounds like.
Yep. And that's where, you hear the phrase a lot, 1 is halfway to 10. It felt like that's what was happening to us. It was like boom, 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 pretty quickly.
Yeah. So yeah, and I want to, not that I want to speed anything up, but I definitely want to spend some time on what you're doing now. So after those 3, what happened?
Yeah. So at that point, my W-2 job, they came to me and said, hey, we want to package this business for sale. It's a small business, great owners, great business, very niche software. And it's around automation, which we were doing automation before automate. Now automation is baked in everything, but at the time it wasn't. So we had a really strong value prop. And they said, if you help us structure this business so that we could sell, change us over to subscription-based modeling, increase our revenue. I was already leading their sales team, but sell more, then it will make this worth your while, right? So now I had a runway. I could see I'm going to land this plane. This business is going to sell, and my plan was to leave the W-2 job and walk into storage and have my income exactly the same. And I was talking to everybody that had transitioned, yourself and all these other people, and nobody said that was the case. I heard things like, you got to just bet on yourself. And there was absolutely no way. I just figured it out. And all the things I didn't want to hear. I wanted to hear, yeah, as soon as I just quit one day and was making the same money on storage. But I was like, I can do it. I have time. But reality was interest rates started rising. I wasn't putting in the effort to find the deals because the other ones had kind of come to me. I was doing the sniper thing, and the sniper was working. Now the sniper, I was missing shots and wasn't taking shots. So the business ends up selling. And at that point, still have the same 3 facilities. But now I had been investing in other people's deals as well, because I realized I didn't have the time, but I still wanted to keep investing in storage. So I'm investing strategically with other really good operators. And when the business sells, I realized almost immediately that this new company was not going to be a good fit for me, from the culture, from my style of sales, my personality, and I needed to do something. So I really dove into like a deep analysis of what are my expenses every month and what is the income that I'm getting from storage. And right now, to that point, we've just been snowballing the money and keeping it in the business, build another building, and just, leaving the money there.
Mm-hmm.
So that analysis, which I recommend everybody should do that, as just a kind of a best practice. But my expenses were all over the place. It wasn't like, every month it was the same. It was spiky. So I was averaging it out and trying to figure out, okay, this expense is going to go away, but I'm going to have this expense. It was harder than I thought, but I came up with this number, and that's the gap that I needed to figure out. And now my why had gone through the roof, because before I wanted to do it for time freedom, and I like storage and it'll be fun and I can be my own boss. But now I was in a very painful situation where, I was getting tasked to do things that I didn't want to do, didn't agree with, and I realized one of two things was going to happen. They were either going to fire me, or I was going to just have a meltdown and just have to leave one way or the other. But the window was short, so I started looking for ways that I could fill that gap. And it was a bigger gap than another storage facility would cover. So, and there really wasn't a lot of people were doing transactions, but I wasn't finding deals. So I started to think about a way I could do it. And I started looking on MLS and for businesses. And I found, those listings on MLS where it's like, it's kind of categorized wrong or something. And this one was 23 acres in a floodplain. And I'm like, this guy's on crack. What is it? And I look at it and I realize it's like, this is actually a turnkey business, so it's 23 acres of land in a floodplain, but it also it's a turnkey driving range business. So I'm like, and it piqued my interest. And now we started going down the path but it had been for sale for a while. And partly because the financials were, hard to understand and they weren't quite all there. And maybe some of it was missing, and he just didn't have, which is common in storage as well. But I didn't know how to buy a driving range, and I'm not just like a hobby golfer, but I started to underwrite it like a storage facility because I knew how to do that. So I said, if this was a storage facility, would I buy it? And it jumped off the page. Like it was like a 14 cap or something like that, as is. And so I started to do a little bit more due diligence and talking to customers that were there, and they're like, yeah, if you could open the bathrooms and give me those little plastic tees, this place would be great. I'm like, okay, so the customers are asking for 30 cents in improvements, and unlocking the bathrooms. So that, I feel like I could easily take the same model of value add strategy to a driving range. And I realized if I wanted to do something big, I needed to make a big splash. And that's where I found the Top Tracer ball range technology. Like if you've ever been to Top Golf, they sell that to other driving ranges. So I said, if I put that in, then I can build a whole business around this. And that's the value. And I can increase prices. And it's not just, same driving range, new management, it's something big, and I can make it a big deal. So I took the risk on that, and it was a big investment to put the infrastructure and the fiber and electric and buying the subscription. But as soon as I put that in, now I'm still doing the W-2 job. I bought the driving range. I still have the storage. And for that 4-month period, I was just getting pulled in a million different directions. And I was half-assing everything. And I was even telling my wife, I'm like, they're yelling at me at the W-2 job. And she's like, are you doing what they asked? And I go, fair. I'm not, because now I'm trying to build a driving range. And as soon as so I bought the driving range in December of 2024. We got to April 2025. And I remember it because it was Good Friday. Everybody's off work. It was a beautiful day. And the driving range was absolutely packed. And I couldn't even get to my laptop to resign because it was so busy. And there's nowhere to park. I'm trying to help people park. And so I came to my computer and I used ChatGPT, do a resignation, make it short and professional, enter. And I cut, paste, send it. and then I went back to helping customers at the driving range.
That's funny.
And from there, it was off to the races with the driving range. And
How
that,
did yeah, I mean a lot of, and we talked about it a week ago, but
Mhm.
how did that, and obviously you probably didn't have enough time at least that day to get
Yeah.
the feeling of you just quit your 9 to 5. But once it kind of settled, how was that feeling? And how has it changed?
Yeah, yeah. No, it was almost like a burden had been, lifted from my shoulders the second I sent that email,
Mm,
and the stress level just went way down, because with a driving range, even with storage, if something has a problem, here's some free golf balls. Oh, and now they're happy,
yeah,
where in this in my W2 role, I'd sell $1 million deal, and they're like, well, when's the next one? And it needs to be 2 million, and your quota just went up. And it's like, I never could make them happy. So with this, I was like, this is such a simple business, and everybody that comes to the driving range is in a good mood. They're here to have
yeah,
fun. They're here to take a break from their life. They're here with their kids or grandkids or their buddies, and they're really just enjoying life. And I thought it would be, a lot of serious golfers. There are a couple, but not very many. Most of them are people just, coming down and having fun with their friends and family. And we've seen first dates going well, first dates not going well. I've seen, the other day we had a new one. A kid was getting potty trained, and so he had come into the pro shop to go potty, and his dad's buying him candy because of the good job. And I was like, see, and now this kid will remember. Well, maybe he won't remember, but his dad will remember. We potty trained him at the driving range, when we were down there. Those are the kind of things that was like, what a cool experience. You get to see people hit a golf ball for the first time. It's just, it's different that it's a business that's bringing joy to people's lives.
for sure. Well, and it's a simple business, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think people try to overcomplicate things. And obviously, yeah, it sounds like you were somewhat in the golf, but not an avid golfer.
Yeah.
And I've always I golf a little bit, probably somewhat same as you, but I've always driven past these driving ranges, not Top Golf, but just driving ranges. And I'm like, there's so much to be made there. Cause I mean, I could think off the top of my
Yeah.
head at minimum 3, maybe 4 within probably more than that, within like a 3-mile radius that have
Mm-hmm.
closed up in the past
Yeah.
decade around me. I have one spot I can go to, and it
Yeah.
is always packed. Like right now, today, it's probably going to be 50 today. It's going to be packed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know there's definitely, there's a niche, but it's a simple business, right? And
Mhm.
you're able to plug what you learned in real estate and self-storage into that business because it is simple.
Yep. Yep. Lots of levers that you can pull. In storage, you have some levers. You can add tenant protection, some other fees, and some other things. But with the driving range, I'm finding there's still levers that I don't even know that I can pull. There's all the kinds of, we got a beer license now. We've got a pro shop that we're selling, stuff in. We can do grips. We can do golf lessons. We can do all these other levers that all drive revenue, and it's all built around this ball range technology that people come to use and experience. And then while they're there, we can, add to their experience by selling them other things.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So obviously you went from your 9 to 5 to you're still working in the golf range, right?
Yeah, I am. And I'm still, so we're what, 15 months into it right now, something like that. And that first year was just really understanding the business. And now that I've put a lot of the fixes in place, this year I want to start to really operationalize it. I'm starting to build redundancy, some systems, and some processes. But this is a business that I can train somebody in an afternoon and they can run it. I've got a new high school kid starting tonight, and for 2 hours I'll train him, and he'll be able to run the business without me there. And so that's kind of the next step for me, is to start putting the right people in place. I've got some processes, but document those and let the business start to kind of run in that way and free up my time to do that.
How I was going to say, how automated do you think you can make that? Because I'm just thinking, The driving range I go to, and the ones that I've always have gone to in the past, you go to the desk, you buy a token, you take that to the ball dispenser, and you fill up your bucket and you go hit balls. There's got to be
Yeah.
a way to automate that token, right?
Yeah, no, right now with our range, you just walk directly to the ball dispenser and you just, it's all touchscreen. You just touch
There you
credit
go.
card or cash, and then you select your size and you tap your card and the balls come out. So you don't even need to go into the pro shop. So you can get balls automatically, and you can go straight to the range, and the top tracer comes on automatically. They can start hitting golf balls. So all that part is automated.
Yeah.
And right now, what we're working on is actually have one of my customers who is an engineer, and we're building a vacuum system that runs off a shop vac motor. So you after you wash the balls, touch a button, and it uses a vacuum, like the bank teller things that suck the things up through the
Yeah.
shaft. It'll use the same thing, and you turn this on, and it's going to launch these golf balls into the ball dispenser, so that the balls, and then we're going to use a little laser, and it will automatically fill itself when it's empty, and it will turn the vacuum on and suck the balls out and dump them in. So that's another
awesome.
piece of automation that we're adding to the mix, and then we can start. That's a big one, because I was calculating how many times I lifted golf balls. I lifted them off the tractor, into the bin, into the washer, into the washer and stack. I mean, it was like millions of pounds that I lifted. You'd think I would look like a bodybuilder or something, but it so takes a toll on your body and your back. So if I can automate some of that stuff with vacuums and using gravity, so we lift it up in the air and then it just kind of goes down. So those are the kind of things that we're looking at doing to streamline the business even more.
That's really cool. That's awesome. So, and you talked a little bit about it, but where to kind of next year, next 5 years, where do you see yourself going?
Yeah. So I think with the driving range businesses, I don't know that I'll own this thing forever, but it was the step that I needed to get me out of the W-2 job. So we'll see where that goes. Maybe my kids will want to have some interest in running it. But I kind of envision that I would maybe sell or finance this business to somebody else, and maybe try to find something else to do, whether it's more storage. Maybe there's other businesses. I really feel like there's a window of time where you in each of these asset classes there's tailwinds, and sometimes I don't know, it's like I don't know if it's an Indian proverb or what, but the best way to ride a horse is the direction it's going. So if you can find that next tailwind, right? We've had it with storage. And maybe the next storage is all these baby boomers that have businesses that are successful, but they haven't injected any new technology. Just like the driving range, the guy he ran a business, and all I did is I brought in technology, that launches balls, and you can see how far they go, and that changed the business. There's all kinds of businesses like that where somebody's in their 70s and they have a great business, but they don't want to inject automation. They don't want to use any new technology. So I think maybe something like that. I just kind of have my radar up of, I think that there's a massive opportunity there. And instead of flipping a storage facility, and maybe you can make several $100,000, you flip a business, you can make a couple million, So I think that I may have some interest in doing that, but I also kind of just enjoy, a kind of a stress-free life. So injecting more stress into my life isn't necessarily something I'm looking to do.
Well, and I was going to ask, because you did say that you would still be interested in buying more storage, and
Oh yeah.
I mean, storage is pretty simple, right? And you talk about injecting more, stress in your life. There's very little stress with storage for the most part.
That's right. Yeah.
Probably maybe a little bit more than a driving range, but it's probably pretty similar.
Yeah. I think, and I've heard you talk about this before. I think if anything with the storage, get bored, so it's so simple.
Yeah.
And then I imagine the driving range is still new. So I'm imagine it's going to probably also get boring, so you put systems and processes in place, and automation, so that you don't have to do some of those things. So, so
Cool. Awesome. Great stuff. Great. I mean, great takeaways. Obviously the relationship piece is, it's kind of to me, the number one factor of where you're at right now. How
Hmm.
you've gotten to where you are is just solid relationships. And people call it sales, but well, some people actually don't call it sales, but it is sales, right? It's the sales
Hmm.
game. If you've been in sales, you understand it. And it's not like you're trying to pull one over on anybody. It's just trying to get to know what people want and
Yeah.
trying to fix their solution and also, better your situation. So
Yeah.
that's all it
Yeah.
is. Great stuff. Awesome. Definitely appreciate you coming on. If anyone wants to reach out, where can they find you?
Well, I don't have anything to sell or offer or anything like that, but they can probably find me on. I'm on LinkedIn, also on Facebook. You can find me there. Type in my name, and if it looks like a picture of a younger version of me, that's me. So,
And if you want to hit a bucket of balls, if you're
yeah,
around Cincinnati or ever around Cincinnati, reach out.
yeah. The place is called the Addison Golf Range in Cincinnati. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, appreciate you coming on, and we'll see you guys next time.